Welcome to PowerCat Live. I am here with Marc Schweigert. Marc is a principal program manager on the PowerCat team. Marc, tell us about what you do and how you got this role.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a program manager on the PowerCat team. I've been on the team for a little over a year now, and I've done a number of things at Microsoft. I've been at Microsoft for a good few years. In this role, I'm working with PowerCat customers, helping, as you always talk about, enterprise customers be successful with the Power Platform.
And so today we're going to talk about ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. Give us just like a quick overview. What is ALM to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like ALM and DevOps, and these words typically have some sort of meaning to people depending on their background, and in many cases their definitions are different, right? But when we talk about ALM, it's Application Lifecycle Management, and the whole concept of adding more rigor to how you build applications. As applications grow in complexity, as the amount of people who work on it grow, you need to start introducing concepts as not only in low-code technology, but obviously clearly also in code-first technology to basically ensure that the quality of your application stays high with all that added complexity. And generally in the industry, when people talk about ALM or application lifecycle management, DevOps and other terms like that, it's all about ensuring that you can have high level of quality in your applications. And that's true for, again, low-code technology as much as it is for code-first technologies.
Now, is it fair to say, this is my sense, is it fair to say that ALM is followed inconsistently just throughout software development overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Some people use source control, right? Some people do build and deployment automation. Some people don't do any of that stuff. I think nowadays most people, when they talk about developing applications, they use some sort of source control system. At least in the pro dev world, right? They use some sort of source control system. They do build and deployment automation as much as possible. And the healthier your ALM is usually measured by the level of automation you have, right? If you can automate everything that you want to do in your whole application lifecycle management process end to end, you've probably hit the pinnacle of good, healthy ALM. If you can't or you don't, then you've probably got work that you could do to increase your quality bar.
Opportunity.
That's right.
So why do people not do this, or what makes implementing ALM difficult, especially with Power Platform?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question. I think it comes from a few different perspectives. I think first and foremost, a lot of people, they kind of scoff at the idea of ALM with low-code technology because it's supposed to be so easy, right? That you don't need, traditional software development engineering rigor, right? And that's certainly true, right? You can build, amazing Canvas apps and, model-driven apps as a single person, right? And, move them from one environment to another using the technology we call solutions. If you're really going to start building something much more complex, with multiple developers and multiple team members and everything else, the reality is that the problems that traditional ALM solve, they solve in the low-code world as well.
Yeah, and I think we've both seen that from our customers in PowerCat too, is that while you can build an app very quickly, if you're going to build an enterprise scale app, you still need the same structure and automated processes that are consistent that ALM provides. So how do we manage ALM in the COE Starter Kit?
So today we use a source control for everything, right? So one of the fundamental concepts to, good, healthy ALM is that the source control system is your source of truth, right? And that you can always essentially deploy your application from source control. And for a lot of people, that's confusing, right? Because I thought low code is, you don't need things like source control. But the reality is that everything that you build in the Power Platform, it can be essentially exported and put into a source control friendly format, so that you have opened up the black box, right? And you can essentially see the code of your application or the metadata that becomes your application when you deploy it into Power Apps through solutions, et cetera.
Yeah, and I've seen that for my customers too. I've had customers where someone that was a true citizen developer built a bot and had to move it then to a production environment. They're like, well, how do I do this? And that's kind of introducing them into the entire ALM process from scratch, right? And so it's good that we have these structures available.
That's right. And the thing with the Power Platform, though, is that you don't have to dive all the way into like full source control ALM, right? Because Power Platform has this concept of solutions, which, until you open them up, are just a zip file, right? And you can take the work that you've done and you can export it from one environment and then import it into another environment and use things like connection references and environment variables and other things to ensure that, the app behaves differently and points to different things across, the different environments. And so understanding that concept of solutions and using it as is without source control is always sort of step one to good ALM, right? Step two, then get into the more source control, build and deployment automation aspects of things.
So what is PowerCat doing to make this entire process easier?
Yeah, so, one of the things we in the Power Customer Advisory team have been building out a good healthy ALM process for the COE starter kit. So effectively what we've done is we've taken what we've built for ourselves to do very robust, multi-person team development with the Power Platform, and we're packaging it up into the COE starter kit, but we're delivering new components in the COE starter kit that we call the ALM accelerators. And so we're targeting both introductory makers, people newer to the Power Platform who really just want a little bit more easy button ALM, right? We talked about solutions. You can import and export them yourselves, but wouldn't it be nice if you have a layer on top that kind of gives you that easy button deployment where somebody approves things behind the scenes and your app just moves from dev to test, from test to prod without you having to do all that manual work with solutions, for example.
Make it really citizen developer easy. I was gonna say, so show us what you got.
Yeah, so the first application I'm going to show you is this is something we call the ALM Accelerator for Makers. And really it is geared towards this idea that a typical citizen developer or maker relatively new to the Power Platform probably doesn't want to have to learn Git, probably doesn't want to have to understand source control systems, doesn't want to have to build out deployment automation, et cetera, right? And so what we've done is we've essentially created a Canvas app that really abstracts all of those things. Now, behind the scenes, this app is absolutely using a source control system. It's doing build and deployment automation, in this case using GitHub, and administrators can see everything that's going on behind the scenes, right? But the end user, the maker, just uses this app, and so they'll come in here and they'll, for example, start a new project. And when they start a new project, they give it a name, they give it a description, and this immediately starts an approval process. And some reviewer will, behind the scenes, bless the creation of some new work that this person's going to do. The application itself, behind the scenes, does environment provisioning. It'll build out dev, test, prod environments for the maker. It will then set up a GitHub repository. It will wire up a bunch of automation behind the scenes in GitHub. Ultimately, the user gets an email, and in this application, they'll see that they have a project. From there, they literally come in and they work on their application, and then come in here and you would click your deploy button. And again, deploy would kick off an approval behind the scenes. And so all the maker knows is that somebody behind the scenes is going to look at the work that they've done. But once that approver approves it, it will then go from dev to test. And then the maker would see the deployment automation happening in this UI, right? And so that's the simplicity that we're looking for in this application, which is to say no learning curve other than having to understand solutions at its most basic and foundational sense. But all the more advanced things that like we do in the COE starter kit, those are not things that makers have to learn how to do.
I like that this automates its own deployment too, right? Of the repo and the pipelines. And then of course, from a maker's perspective, just work in the studio, work on your flows, and then come here when it's time to deploy. So that's right. Seems like it's a very easy adjustment. Now, what's the more advanced version?
Yeah, so the advanced version is actually the application that we've essentially built for ourselves, the COE starter kit, right? And I always say that this is for the persona that is unafraid of words like Git, pull request, right? Merge, deployment automation, et cetera. And so literally it enables things like developing in isolation, right? Which is one of the more advanced concepts that we talk about when you've got multiple people building different components within a solution. You all work within the solution, but if you work in a shared environment, you're often stepping on each other and you can't work on a Canvas app at the same time and those sorts of things. Right. So we like to encourage people to work in developer isolation. And so what this allows you to do, for example, is that, if I'm, haven't done any work for a couple of days. I could have work items assigned to me, but I know that people on my team have been doing work and it's all been merged into the source control system. Well, first thing I have to ask myself is, how do I get everybody's work into my developer environment? And so we've got a facility for that, right? You can come in here and you can essentially import any of the solutions that we're working on. And so I could import this one and click import. And it would literally take the latest from source control essentially and bring it into my development environment. I can also clear out my environment, right? So oftentimes, there's this principle that we encourage people to do: develop one unmanaged solution in an environment at a time. Everything else should be managed. And so I can actually come in here and I can click delete solution, and this will literally clear out the unmanaged solution from my environment, right? Which is a very handy thing to do as you're working on different solutions in a single environment. So you don't have to always constantly spin up, different environments to do development of different things. You can keep the same environment. You can, once you get everything in source control, right, you can clear out your current work. You can get a different solution's latest code inside of your environment, do work on that. You can, commit it to a branch and then just kind of repeat that process over and over again. And so we're trying to make it as easy and simple as possible to do some of the things that we do.
That's powerful.
Very similarly, like if I want to do some work, I come in here, I open the solution. When I do that, again, it just takes me to the standard maker experience, right? Where again, we're not trying to replace that. But what I can do then is make a bunch of changes. Once my changes are done, I come over here and I select push changes to get. And then if I'm already working in a branch, I can just push my latest changes to that branch. If I need to create a brand new branch off of like the main branch, I can do that from this UI, right? So I can create a new branch off of a branch, etc. But the idea here is that we're not dictating to people a branching strategy, but ultimately I can just continue to push code to my branch until I'm ready to then create what's called a pull request. And a pull request is a way for a maker to have a peer review the work that they've been doing. And we do this quite often in the COE starter kit. Like everything that we do that gets merged into our main branch for the next release of a solution is reviewed by somebody, right? And so I can, for example, go take a look at, let's say, this pull request. And again, this just takes me to Azure DevOps. We're not trying to replace the Azure DevOps UI, but I can, for example, see what files have changed. I can go scroll down, and I can look at this main screen, for example, and I can see what edits were made over time. And in this case, I can see that somebody added a label called delete me, and I can probably come in here and say, you know what? I can add a comment that says, use naming conventions. And oh, by the way, if you haven't, paid attention recently to the Power Apps blog, right, we are using this new experimental feature of Canvas code. So source code becomes a very valuable thing, not only for peer review, right, but also for things like an individual developer. I mean, I don't know how many times I've used this to go back in time to find code that was working when in my Canvas app, I kind of painted myself into a corner. And so the easiest thing to do is go straight to the source code, grab the function that was working, bring it back, take a look at it, realize what changes I've made, et cetera. And so again, this is something that source control systems have offered forever. And now you can use this kind of technique with Canvas app development, for example.
One of the real values of doing real structured ALM. And I think what this really points out, like going back to your earlier definition of ALM, is that low code doesn't mean you don't have disciplined development, right? The software development methodology. And this kind of helps you bridge the gap between both. So some of this is available now, some of this is coming. Where do people go to find out more?
Yeah, so to start, I would go to aka.ms/COE starter kit. That's where all of this stuff will be shipped, right? The COE starter kit is our mechanism in PowerCat to essentially embody patterns and practices through tooling to share with our customers, and anybody can use it. The Maker app, the one that's geared more towards the entry-level citizen developer, the first one I showed, is already available, right? And you can download it now. It's a reference implementation. Today it uses GitHub. It is part of what we're doing in the future to make sure it targets both GitHub and Azure DevOps. The other application, the one that's more for advanced makers, it's in private preview today, but similarly, it'll show up at the COE starter kit documentation page. And frankly, if people are interested in the private preview when they see this video and we're not public, they can always hit me up on Twitter, and ask. And we're welcoming people into the private preview. We just got some nuanced things why we haven't gone into public preview yet, but we hope to get there soon. And again, it's a reference implementation. You can download it, install it, use it as is, or you can make it your own. The Advanced Maker application uses Azure DevOps today, but equally it will target GitHub as well, right? Because our ultimate goal with these accelerators is to give customers choice, and our applications will work with both.
And you didn't say when they would work with both. Is it safe to assume it'll be in the fullness of time, Mark?
Yeah, my favorite word that Ryan Cunningham these days. So the short answer is all of this is going open source. So it's going to be an open source project, and when really determines on how much we can rally the community to contribute. So one of the ways we're trying to accelerate not only the ALM Accelerator, no pun intended,
nice.
But the COE Starter Kit is to make it a full open source project. And as you can imagine, getting to healthy ALM was paramount to us then truly converting to an open source project and then asking for contributions. It really will be driven by the community. And the thing is, once we are an open source project, people will just be able to go to our GitHub project and get the answer themselves, because we're going to do it all out in the open. If you want to know how far out we are on a certain work item, you'll be able to go to the issue. You'll be able to read all the discussions around it and get the latest from the people who are doing the work.
That's great. Well, Mark, thanks for showing both of these apps and for talking about this. I know from my customers, I'm hearing about ALM more and more. So I know how valuable this can be for the community overall.
Great.
Thanks for talking today.
Thanks, Phil.